Imagine Constantinople trapped. From the sea, it is choked by a vast fleet. From the land, it is surrounded by a countless army. The connection with the outside world is completely severed. Neither grain nor news can penetrate inside. Maslama does not intend to storm the walls head-on and lose men. He plans to starve the city, make the defenders watch their children die of exhaustion, and wait for the gates to open on their own. For Bulgaria and Khan Tervel, this invasion became a moment of truth. On the one hand, the Arabs do not show direct aggression towards the Bulgarians. Their goal is Rome, and the barbarians to the north do not particularly interest them for the time being. Moreover, the fall of the eternal enemy, Byzantium, might seem like a profitable scenario for Tervel. At first glance, stand on the hill and watch your two enemies destroy each other. But Tervel has that strategic vision that allows him to peer beyond the horizon of events. He sees the scale of the Arab army and understands a simple truth. Constantinople is a cork in a bottle. Once it flies out, the contents, 200,000 fanatical warriors of the caliphate, will pour straight onto the Bulgarian plains. Tervel finds himself faced with the most difficult geopolitical choice of his life. The Treaty of 716 obliges him to aid Byzantium. But what sane person would keep a contract with a dead man, which is what the empire has practically become? Going to war against the caliphate is a suicidal risk. The Arabs know no defeat. Their resources seem endless. To attack them is to bring the wrath of a superpower upon your small people. But inaction is also deadly. If Maslama takes the city, Bulgaria will be the next target, and then it will have to fight alone, without the walls of Constantinople and without allies. The situation reached a critical point when Arab reconnaissance units began to penetrate north of the siege lines, entering the Bulgarian zone of influence. This is no longer just a neighborhood. This is an invasion of personal space. Fierce arguments are taking place in the tent of the inn in Pliska. The old warlords suggest fortifying the borders and waiting. But Tervel senses that the time for passive defense is over. The fate of Europe hangs in the balance, and the scissors that can cut it are in the hands of the Arab general. Tervel understands that to survive, he must become a shield for the same enemy his ancestors fought against for decades. The enemy of my enemy must become my friend. But how could he explain this to his warriors, who only yesterday had dreamed of burning Constantinople? The answer lies not in words, but in actions. Actions that would shake the foundations of the world of that time. The autumn of 717 brings not only cold winds from the Black Sea, but also the icy breath of death over the Bosphorus. Constantinople is suffocating in the siege, and in the camp of Khan Tervel, the fate of the entire Western civilization is being decided. This is the moment when pragmatism must overcome age-old hatreds, and cold reason must overcome hot blood. In front of Tervel lies a map on which the enormous shadow of the caliphate already covers half the known world. He understands, if this shadow engulfs Constantinople, the next victim will be his still fragile Bulgaria. Islamic Jihad does not recognize borders or treaties. It recognizes only obedience. For Maslama ibn Abdul Malik, the Bulgarians are just another tribe of infidels, ones who must either be converted or destroyed. Tervel and Number 39's decision to side with Byzantium is not an act of charity or chivalry. It is an act of pure state selfishness. The Khan understood perfectly well it was better to fight the Arabs under the walls of a foreign city alongside an ally than to meet them alone in front of your own yurts a year later. But how can he convince his people? Tervel doesn't in hash 39th talk about regret. He talks about survival. He points to the smoke from the burned villages in Thrace, where Arab troops are already plundering Bulgarian lands, and says simply, "The wolves have not come just for the neighbor and number 39's sheep. They have come for the entire flock." The cooperation between Tervel and Emperor Leo III the Isaurian became an example of secret diplomacy. Through the siege ring, past the patrols of the Arab fleet, messengers slip in. A lion, imprisoned in the golden cage of his capital, begs for help and promises everything. But Tervel doesn't and has 39 need promises. He needs coordination. The plan is simple and deadly effective. While the Byzantines held the defense on the walls and held back Maslama and Hush 39's main forces, the Bulgarian army struck in the rear. The Arabs, accustomed to being hunters, suddenly had to become prey, squeezed between the hammer of the Bulgarian cavalry and the anvil of the Constantinople walls. Tervel and number 39's first strike was delivered with surgical precision. His scouts, who knew the terrain like their own home, discovered the weaknesses in the besiegers and number 39's vast camp. The Arabs, confident that the barbarians are frightened, carelessly stretch their supply lines. The Bulgarian cavalry appears like a ghost from the hills. This is not a classic battle. This is a tactic. You strike, you disappear. The Bulgarians attack supply detachments, destroy convoys, kill patrols, and disappear into the fog before Maslama can react. The effect is devastating. The vast army of hundreds of thousands of men requires vast quantities of food every day. By cutting off land supplies, Tervel begins to suffocate the enemy. Rumors spread in the Arab camp about countless northern demons who know neither fear nor mercy. Enraged by the audacity of the filthy pagans, Maslama was forced to withdraw part of his troops from the siege and send them north. This was precisely what Tervel was aiming for. It stretches the enemy and number 39's forces them to scatter, and turns a monolithic siege into a war on two fronts. The climax comes when Maslama sends a large detachment to punish the Bulgarians. Tervel meets them in prepared positions. The heavy Bulgarian cavalry, armored and disciplined, crashed like a battering ram into the light Arab cavalry. For the desert warriors, accustomed to maneuverable warfare in the open, the clash in the narrow valleys of Thrace was a shock. The Arabs suffered heavy losses and retreated in panic to their main camp. This was the first major victory of Christian arms against Muslims on land in many years. And it has enormous psychological significance. The myth of the invincibility of the caliphate is beginning to crack.
The defenders of Constantinople, seeing from the walls how the Arab tents were burning on the horizon, regained their spirits. They realized they were not alone in this deadly battle. Tervel proved that his choice was correct. He didn't just enter the war, he changed its rules. Now the besiegers themselves found themselves under siege. But winter was coming, a time when nature becomes more terrifying than any enemy. And it was she who would become Tervel's greatest ally in the coming nightmare. The Bulgarians had trapped the beast, but a wounded beast, as is known, is twice as dangerous, especially when it has nothing to lose but its life. If war had a favorite season, then in the year 717 it would undoubtedly be winter. Nature, as if in conspiracy with the defenders of the Christian world, brought an unprecedented cold upon Thrace. The chronicles tell us that the snow fell unusually early and lay there without melting for a full 100 days. For the Arabs, Berbers, and Egyptians who formed the core of the caliphate's army, this was tantamount to a journey into an icy hell. People accustomed to the scorching desert sun found themselves in a white captivity, where every breath burned their lungs with cold, and their limbs turned black and fell off from frostbite. Their light clothes and tents could not protect them from the piercing wind from the Bosphorus. The great army that only yesterday threatened to shake the world began to slowly freeze alive. But the cold was only half the disaster. The real horseman of the apocalypse that visited the Arab camp was hunger. The land blockade organized by Tervel worked flawlessly. Bulgarian mobile units intercepted every caravan, every grain cart that tried to reach the besiegers. The locals, fleeing the war, hid all their supplies or fled under the protection of the fortresses. Maslama's huge camp became a giant hungry maw with nothing to feed. The supplies brought by sea quickly ran out, and new supplies became almost impossible due to storms and the actions of Byzantine ships with Greek fire. The chroniclers' testimonies about what happened in the Arab camp that winter chilled the blood even after 13 centuries. The proud warriors of Islam first ate all the livestock: sheep, camels, horses. When that ended, anything that could be chewed came into use: harness leather, shoes, tree bark, and grass roots. Desperation led people to cannibalism. Arab sources write with horror that soldiers searched the filth for unground grains and boiled soup from the corpses of their comrades. Diseases, dysentery, typhus, and plague mowed down the ranks of the invaders faster than arrows from the walls. The camp, which was supposed to be a springboard for triumph, turned into a giant cemetery where the living envied the dead. And all this time, while the cold and hunger were doing their dirty work, the Bulgarians did not give the enemy a moment's rest. Tervel's tactic was ruthless and effective: exhaustion. His warriors, accustomed to harsh winters and dressed in warm furs, felt in control of the situation. They attacked at night, during blizzards, sowing panic and death. Arab sentries, frozen in place, often failed to even raise the alarm. The Bulgarians appeared from the snowy mists, struck and disappeared, leaving behind only corpses and fear. This was a psychological war of destruction. The feeling in Maslama's camp was that they were not fighting against people, but against the spirits of winter themselves, invulnerable and omnipresent. Paradoxically, it was this terrible winter that united yesterday's enemies, Byzantines and Bulgarians, more strongly than any diplomatic seals. Emperor Leo III, seeing the dire situation of the besiegers, understood that victory was close, but that without Tervel's pressure, it would be impossible. The Bulgarian hammer continued to hit the anvil, not allowing the Arabs to regroup or organize normal supplies. Maslama tried to send detachments deep into Bulgarian lands in search of food, but these expeditions ended tragically. The exhausted, hungry soldiers fell into ambushes and died in the snow, without finding even a crumb of bread. By the spring of 718, the Caliphate's army was a pitiful sight. Of the 200,000 warriors, barely half remained, and even they looked more like shadows. The fighting spirit was broken. Discipline was maintained only by the fear of punishment. Maslama understood that the siege had failed, but his pride and the caliph's orders did not allow him to retreat. He waited for spring and reinforcements, hoping that with the arrival of warm weather, luck would return. But he did not know that Terval was preparing the final act of this drama. The Khan had no intention of waiting for the enemy to lick his wounds. He was preparing a decisive blow that would forever deny the caliphate the opportunity to look to Europe. Winter had done its job, weakening the monster. Now it was time for man to finish it off. The snow began to melt, revealing mountains of corpses around the walls of Constantinople, and along with the first streams, the blood of the last, most terrible battle of this war flowed. The spring of 718 came not with the song of birds and the scent of flowers, but with the heavy, suffocating smell of decay that rose from the fields around Constantinople. The earth, freed from snow, revealed the terrible fruits of the winter siege. Thousands of bodies with no one to bury. But for the surviving Arabs, the arrival of warm weather meant little hope. New fleets arrived from Egypt and Africa with food and reinforcements. It seemed that Allah had finally taken pity on his warriors. However, Maslama did not know that this help would become his curse. A large part of the crews of the Egyptian ships were Coptic Christians, who at the first opportunity switched to the side of Emperor Leo. They not only surrendered their ships, but also revealed the plans of the Arab command. This was Terval's signal for action. The Khan understood, now or never. The enemy was disorganized, demoralized, but still dangerous due to its numbers. If Maslama were given time to rebuild his strength and feed his men, the war could drag on for years. Terval gathered his army into a fist. These were no longer the cautious attacks that had plagued the Arabs in winter. This was a full-scale preparation for a general battle. The Bulgarian regiments, reinforced with Slavic militia, lined up on the hills overlooking the Arab camp from the south. The gleam of their armor in the spring sun was the last warning many of the caliphate's warriors saw. The battle began at dawn. The Bulgarian cavalry descended on the Arab positions like a mountain avalanche. The blow was aimed straight at the heart of the camp, where the remnants of the elite units were trying to organize a defense. But what can people exhausted by hunger and disease do against well-fed, strong, and furious horsemen? The Arab defensive line buckled and collapsed in the first hours. What followed could hardly be called a battle in the usual sense of the word. It was a massacre. Chaos engulfed the vast camp. Thousands of people were running in panic, seeking salvation, but were trapped between the city walls, the sea, and the advancing Bulgarians. The Byzantines, watching all this from the walls, did not remain indifferent. Emperor Leo ordered the gates to be opened and a strike to be launched in support of the Allies. The Arabs found themselves in a cauldron. Their famous discipline, which had helped them conquer half the world, crumbled to dust. The commanders lost control of their troops. Despair gave some units suicidal courage, but these were only isolated flashes of resistance in an ocean of panic. Bulgarian swords worked tirelessly. Chroniclers, both Western and Eastern, cite monstrous figures for losses. Theophanes. The Confessor speaks of 22,000 killed Arabs. Other sources indicate 30,000. For a medieval battle, these were catastrophic losses, tantamount to the virtual destruction of an army. Amidst this hell, Maslama tried to save at least something. Realizing that the battle on land was lost definitively and irretrievably, he ordered a retreat to the ships. But boarding under a rain of arrows and under the blows of the Bulgarian cavalry turned into a bloody scuffle. People fell into the water, drowning under the weight of their armor and pulling others to the bottom. The sea off the coast turned blood red. Those who failed to reach the boats were doomed. The massacre at the walls of Constantinople marked the turning point of the war. The army that came to destroy a world falls apart under the blows of hunger, cold, and Bulgarian swords. The caliphate is not just losing a battle, it is losing the initiative. But it's not over yet. The surviving forces are still trying to escape. The fleet is about to leave the Bosphorus, and the final act of this colossal war is yet to come. In the next and final part, you will see how the siege ends, what is the fate of the Arab army, and why Khan Terval's victory changes the history of Europe forever. If you found this video interesting, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the finale.